So, some of you probably don't know this, but I manage a group on Facebook. It is an autism support group, which means that it supports those who struggle outside of autism as those who are struggling within the spectrum. Otherwise, they have it, they experience it, but it also helps with those with other special needs. And so I think it is my duty wherever I am, even when I'm not on the group, to educate people and tell people about the diagnosis, about my own, and just to empower people that way. And so I noticed there was one of those ads where they said Tylenol was causing autism, which I think is a load of claptrap, which I'll get into later on. And it kind of went into a tirade. I'm gonna be honest. It was like a tirade, but like just more of an educational tirade, like a lecture. It was more of a lecture than it was a tirade. And I was talking about Hans Asperger's, who was named the neurological neurodivergent so-called disorder, which I don't think is a disorder, by the way. It was named after him, and he named it after himself, more specifically. So, Hans Asperger's, I'm gonna make this as brief as I possibly can, and I'm not gonna go into a lot of details. This is actually a summary. So, Hans Asperger's lived in Austria during World War II. Around the same time that the Nazis invaded Austria. And fascist ideas or fascist ideals and eugenics were already very heavily interwoven and very brainwashed into their society. And this is no reflection on Austria. I love Austria. I love any foreign country, and I'm totally non-judgmental when it comes to this. There were those that thought outside of this thinking process, as you probably have seen, the Von Trapp family that Sound of Music was based on. They did not have those ideals. But his ideal was that the male Austrians with this autism would be superior and would change the world, set it on fire, and just rule society as it was. And society at that time thought that disabilities or any kind of special needs, whether it was cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, anything that affected their physical or mental health, was a burden to society. And Hans Asperger's was responsible for the death of over 600 children. And this upsets me. I know I did not just Google this. I read like a 4,000 word article that was done on a Norwegian site, and I read it because I found it fascinating. Even though it was very upsetting, I kind of had to remove my emotions from it a little bit and look at it as, as a historian would look at this, as like, oh, this is fascinating. But afterward, I was very upset because some of these children that were sent to this notorious hospital, which is all that he did, he signed paperwork that said, yes, I approve, I refer this child to this place. But these children were as young as 2 years old. They did not get to see their families, their mother, their father, and some of these parents would thank him, say, thank you. This child would have been a burden to my family, and I wouldn't have been able to take care of her or him or whatever it was. And probably about 30%, don't quote me on this, were autistic. The rest were simply special needs. They had cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, they had things that are now celebrated to this day. But if you were a girl and you had autism in Austria, it was a death sentence. So I do not like to be associated with that diagnosis of Asperger's because it is no longer an official diagnosis. And this is what I said on this Facebook comment, and he said, so Do you have kids with autism? Or are you just telling people that you know how to use Google? And I could kind of feel his hostility, but then I calmed down and I realized this is a person that is a parent of somebody who's autistic. So I was very careful with my words and I said, okay. I gave him a brief summary of my life, very brief. It looked really super long because this is Facebook comments, right? I said, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 4. I was diagnosed later with ADHD when I was 13. I was very fortunate. I was severely bullied by my teacher. I was put practically in a corner away from the rest of the class so she could keep an eye on me, the teacher in 1st grade. And I was bullied just persistently. I was then taken out of school. I was homeschooled. Things got a little better. They didn't get like a whole lot better because I was now, instead of being bullied, I was in an abusive home. So yeah, that sounds like I had it pretty good, right? No, my teacher, who happened to be my parent at the time, was very abusive. I didn't actually mention that. I left that part out. And even then, children who I would encounter treated me like I was a freak. They treated me, not like a freak per se. I'm not like I was in a cage and people were laughing at me, freak. No, as I said, the word freak has changed. It is now more of an acceptable word. I'm not trying to insult anybody that actually was part of a freak show, but I'm talking about you're weird and I don't know why, and ew, goodbye, that kind of thing. And they just looked at me like they knew something was wrong and they tried to figure it out, but they were just kind of too scared. And they looked, some of them looked genuinely terrified because they didn't know me, they didn't know who I was, they didn't know what was wrong with me, and that scared them. It wasn't so much, I'm better than you. There were some kids that I encountered that did think that they were better than me, but I didn't see that, so I kind of let it go. It did make me cry, though, that the other kids would ignore me when I went to swim practice or when I went to on-site charter school classes, which they had some at the time. And people don't realize that homeschoolers actually got together. They were really weird, but they had get-togethers and they socialized. So I wasn't completely devoid of socialization. I did leave the house. I was let out of my broom closet and under the stairs. I was not a house elf, okay? I was not a brownie. I was not Harry Potter. I was abused, but not quite to that extent. So I told this man who had, you know, was not happy with what I was saying, and I said, and so at the very end, I kind of said, I know the pain it is to be ignored and to struggle with autism, and I'm just here to spread awareness. And even if I wasn't autistic, is that such a bad thing for me to want to spread awareness? I'm just trying to spread awareness amongst ableism, amongst people who think that autism is a burden. He finally wrote back and he said, yeah, I get what you're saying, but I have twins and they're autistic and they're a burden both mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I was like, yeah, that's because they're kids. Is it going to get easier as you get older? Probably not. No, I don't have the experience of being a parent. I don't have that experience, but I do have an experience of being treated like I was a burden. Now, is autism a burden? I suppose it depends where you are, but it is to my belief that this burden can turn into a blessing. And the thing is, if you adopted that child, if you brought that child into the world, you contributed in some way, if you're a father or a mother, you were responsible for bringing that child into the world, that is your responsibility. Now, unless you don't want to have that responsibility, you can give it to someone else. But don't complain to me about how it is a burden to you. That child or children are a burden to you because you chose to bring that child into your life. You chose that. Nobody put a gun to your head and said, you have to do this. Nobody said you had to sleep with that woman or sleep with that man, unless it's a that child was from, a sexual assault, maybe. But unless there's no sexual assault or threatening involved, you chose to have the child. You chose it. You chose to adopt. You chose to get custody. And I know this sounds harsh, but every child in itself is a burden. That's part of when you take a child home. They're going to cry. You have to do everything for them. You're up sleepless nights. Yes, it is more extreme for somebody who takes care of that child, but you're saying that it's a burden. You chose to take that burden home in a bundle. So, yes, it's a burden to your emotions. It's a burden to your mind and to whatever, but you signed up for that. Parents always say this. I didn't sign up for this. Yes, you did. The moment you decide to have whoopee, without the protection, without the birth control and the or maybe just abstinence, which is the best kind of birth control, or you forgot to, wear a condom or whatever, or you just, decided maybe I should just, not have sex. But you chose to do that. You chose to go into the bedroom and do all of that. You had fun, and then boom, there was a baby. There's a baby. Or you went to the the foster care and you said, I like that kid over there. Yeah, the kid that's running in circles. I really would like that kid. You chose that. So yeah, I don't want you to hear because guess what? This is a very poignant memory. I remember a time where I was picking up glass and I was trying to clean mayonnaise off the floor, and the things that were being told to me at this time. And I said to my parent, I said, you chose to have me. You chose to take me in. Why are you complaining about this? Why is this a problem now? Why is my autism a problem? And she looked at me and she said, and you've been a burden to me ever since. Ever since the day I took you in, you've given me shit. And I'm on my hands and knees at this point. So if you're going to tell me that your child is a burden, then that means I was a burden too. That means what that woman told to me when I was cleaning up her mess off the floor while I could get cuts on my hands from glass. You're telling me that I am a burden, and I refuse to believe that. Autism is a blessing. Now, if you're a parent, you have every right to say that that's a burden. But remember, you chose it. You chose to do that. Don't tell me that someone tied your hands behind your back, or that you feel guilty, or that you feel ashamed. It's your child. What did you expect? Did you expect Rose Garden? Did you expect the child to come out singing? Did you expect it to be a Disney movie? No, it's not going to. That's parenthood. That's part of it. And yeah, you might say, I don't have any say because I've never had a child, or I'm young, or I'm white, or I'm not smart enough, or whatever. You can say whatever you want, but That child is your responsibility because you fed them, you clothed them. It doesn't matter whose child it is. You decided to have them in your home. Whether it's for a month, a year, or whatever, that's your responsibility right now. And that's part of being an adult. Being an adult is shit. It's a burden. The whole deal is a burden. You've got bills, you got kids, you got ex-wives, you got things that you can't handle at that time. That's what happened when you became an adult. That's what happened after 18. You were on your own. Now, I'm going to give you sympathy. I realize I told this man, I said, I respect you and I give you my love. I am completely non-judgmental, and I understand that from your perspective it is a burden, but let me tell you, every child has a burden in the package. The child themselves isn't a burden. It is the stress, the sleepless nights. It's not the child so much. The child can't help it. An autistic kid can't help. They didn't ask to exist. They didn't ask to be the way they were. So whose responsibility is for that crying and the sleepless night? It's yours, because you have to take care of that child. And that's what you signed up for. You didn't get instructions. I'm sorry. Life sucks. But to tell a human being that they are a burden, can you imagine how that's going to affect them? Can you imagine if your child grows up and sees that? Autism is a burden. Do you know what that translates? I'm a burden. I shouldn't exist. I should die. I should just drop dead. That's what it should. That is why autistic children and teenagers commit suicide, because they don't think that they have a purpose. They don't think that they are a blessing. They don't see themselves as a blessing. They don't see themselves as being a miracle, because a child is a fucking miracle, and you don't appreciate that. I know it's hard to appreciate life when the kid is screaming in your face and you haven't slept and you are, at your last lap. It's easy to see that, but often when you are stressed, you do not see the truth. You do not see the real beauty that is before you. Autism is a little bit extra. And guess what? If that is your child genetically, your genes contributed to that child. That's what causes autism. Genetics. Your wife had it, maybe your husband had it. Somebody in your family had it. So I hate to be the bringer of bad news, but you are responsible for that child being autistic, because your genes were infused into that child. You probably didn't notice that you had any challenges, or you didn't have dyslexia or bipolar, or you didn't have this or that, but you had a neurodivergent gene. And when two neurodivergent, it can be a very tiny neurodivergent gene, but even with just one, can cause autism. So yes, your genes, your child, and it is a miracle that we can make life. We've made life. And that's a blessing. Now, if you can't see that, that's really sad, because children are a blessing. And one day that child may end up changing the world. You might find that the child has the pure spirit that you've ever seen in a child. You might find that that child is smarter than you, or that that child has a great ability to learn and to absorb vast amounts of information. And autism is extra. It's a little bit extra. So you're going to get a little bit of extra work when you're parenting. That's just part of parenting. It's a struggle. and you add autism to it, of course it feels like a burden. Of course it feels like you're having to carry a 2-ton boulder on your shoulders, and I can understand you, and I salute you. I respect you, and I give you my love because you are a warrior for autism. You are making a difference. But please don't say these things, that your child is a burden, because you chose to have that burden. You chose to have that child and bring them into your home. And if you see them as a burden, don't take care of them. Don't take care of them. Give them to somebody else who is going to see them as being the beautiful miracle that they are. I understand if you're under a lot of stress. Reach out. Talk to people. Talk to other parents that are dealing with the same thing. Maybe you won't feel like you're struggling as much. And maybe you can get through these struggles with people that have to wake up every day with a child with autism, or they have to, deal with somebody who's nonverbal, or, because that's really going to help you. But don't use Facebook to tell people that autism is a burden to society, because I refuse to believe this. I have been treated like a fucking burden for most of my life. And I refuse to see any child as that. Now, me, no, I don't have children. You know why? Because I'm smart. I know my capabilities. I know what I'm capable of. And when I see a child, now don't think that I don't like children. I do. If you bring your child to me, I will be nice. I will be funny. I will be entertaining. I will be the perfect aunt, mom, whatever you want me to be to a child. I won't be mean to a child. That's like being mean to an animal. But as far as when someone brings a baby in and they say, "Here, look at the baby," and I'm like, no. Ew. It's not that I don't like babies. Babies are cute, but it just doesn't bring out. I've had one experience where I saw a child and I wanted one. When I thought about what it took to have a child, I thought, yeah, maybe not. And the reason is I'm very easily overwhelmed. I like me time. I like to be alone. I like to have a break. I don't want to be up all hours of the night. I know what I'm capable of, just like I've chosen not to drive because I don't want to get in a car accident. I don't like when people talk to me and I'm doing other things. It makes me I have actually screamed at people who have tried to ask me to do, if one person says one thing and I'm doing something else, I will scream at them. So I don't want to be a danger to myself or to others. So I choose not to drive. The same thing goes for children. I'll babysit, sure. I'll take care of it, but sorry. That's not how I view children. But I will take care of that child. I'm a good babysitter. I'm great at it. I do have some motherly qualities, but as far as if somebody were to hand me a baby, I don't have that motherly instinct exactly. I don't look at it and go, "Oh, I just ready to eat it." I don't have that. I'm not over it. I do say, "Oh, that's so cute. That baby's so cute," but I won't be like crazy, which I know a lot of women do. Women just get crazy. I don't know what it is, but from the moment, like from 18 to 40, it seems to be these are the times where women just think babies are irresistible. They just look at them, they're like, and I'm like, and I don't get overly crazy about that, okay? Babies are cool. Babies are beautiful. But I just don't want to have kids. So I hope this was helpful, and I shall be having another video tomorrow. And I'm sorry if this is harsh. but I think that I should be harsh and I shouldn't sugarcoat things, you know? So, thank you so much for listening.